Jenny, coach and NLP practitioner, helping to motivate, inspire and support people to strive for personal growth, create inner change and design the life that you want to be living. My biggest fear around divorce was definitely financial. How on earth could we keep the house? And it turns out that this is the number one fear of most people heading into divorce. It's the first thing they think about, what happens to the house. And we had moved house 5 times in 2 years and finally found our forever home. And then 2 months later, we were heading into separation. So it was really scary. You know, we just bought this house, we loved it, the kids were finally settled in a good school and everything seemed to be going well. And then all of a sudden, just like that, we decided we were going to separate. So I was constantly told horror stories of men not paying, women losing everything, and I hadn't worked in a high-paying job in years. I'd been a mum and a wife, supporting my husband's career, and my career was nowhere to be seen. And I'd been told so many times, you'll have to sell the house, you'll have to sell the house. And I knew that it wasn't possible to buy somewhere else within this area. So I was too scared to find out what the reality was going to be, and I ignored it. We just didn't bother getting divorced because it was amicable. And after we'd both been in relationships for quite a while, we decided it was time to start proceedings. So I went to the solicitor and given our particular circumstances, he said it was very unlikely we would have to leave the house before the kids were 18. And if only I'd asked years before, I could have had everything sorted. I wouldn't have had all those years and years of sleepless nights, laying awake, wondering what the outcome would be and what decisions we would have to make. So unfortunately, due to many factors, the divorce is not complete, and we've been separated for 7 years now, but there was lots of things. So initially we were quite apathetic, we were very amicable. It wasn't something that we felt we had to do. Also, during then the pandemic hit and it was really difficult. Unfortunately, my solicitor sadly became ill and died quite quickly, so we had to sort of start all over again. And so now since lockdown, there's been a lot more divorces. The spike in divorce rates has just absolutely shot up. I'll go into that at some point in another video, but it means there's a lot of processing to do. Does this all sound familiar? Does it sound like the sort of things you've been worried about? I thought I'd talk today about lots of different things that people are concerned with when they talk about separating or divorce, and the top things that people worry about, and then what you can do about them. So the second most common thing that people worry about when they're talking about divorcing and separating is losing relationships. The big one, of course, is with the children. So not spending every day, every night with the children is often something that's unfamiliar to people. Couples worry about how they will split time, which also has an impact actually on how much maintenance is paid. And dads in particular often don't get to see their kids every day. And mums who have never been away from their children suddenly are faced with days during the week, weekends that are free. And that's when they wake up and think, who the hell am I? And this can cause massive anxiety for both parents. Due to my ex living several hours away, due to his job and always having worked away, it was just, I have the kids that for a large chunk of it. And that's just the way it is. It's always been that way. But when you're on your own, actually dealing with a lot of the parenting, it does feel like a whole new level of responsibility. It's quite different to even when my ex worked away, having that phone call at night, sort of going over the day and discussing things about the children and what's happening. So it's not quite the same unless there's something that really seriously happens. And this, of course, can be exacerbated by a really acrimonious separation. So ours wasn't. So it's been a lot easier to do co-parenting, but for a lot of people, it's incredibly difficult to have those co-parenting situations, and that's something that you will worry about if that is the case for you. One thing that I have never identified as being as a single mum or a single parent. I don't really know why that hasn't been the case, because largely most of the time I am, but it's just not a label that I've used for myself. We do try to co-parent as much as possible, but I still take on most of the big decision or the day-to-day decisions, and then any big stuff we kind of do together. But I just never identified as a single parent, and I know a lot of people out there do have that identity, and again, that sometimes can become an identity statement. I'm a single parent, and gets you lost in the midst of life and not really knowing who you are as an individual, not just as a parent. The next relationships that can be lost are friends and family. So I had a client who felt that all their friends were actually their ex's friends, and they had to make a new friendship group because they didn't have those support systems, and the friends kind of moved more towards the husband's side. And losing the family of your ex, that can be traumatic. If you've had a good relationship with them, that can be a big thing to shift, and it can be a real worry. For some people, it's probably a big relief and they're really happy about it. So it's a double-edged sword, that one. Sometimes people are very happy not to have to deal with the in-laws again, and for other people, that can be really traumatizing. And then there's a relationship with your ex. Again, because it was amicable, I never worried about losing my ex as a friend. It wasn't something that crossed my mind. Unfortunately, that is something that has happened over time. And partly we were hearing constantly how unusual it was for people to stay friends. We had lots of people saying, oh, at some point it's all going to fall apart. And I guess in some ways, you might say it was manifested that way. And after 4 years, we aren't necessarily the friends that I would have liked us to have been able to stay. But I do firmly believe that couples, after they separate, can stay friends, or they maybe have to have some time apart and then become friends later on down the line. But it can be a difficult thing to think, if you've been together with somebody for a long time or even a short time and you've built that relationship, not having it there, whether it was good or bad, can be difficult. I think that was actually one of the things I worried about with my not my marriage, but the 4-year relationship, was that we were good friends for quite a while also, and we shared a hobby together, and so losing that friendship part felt more difficult than the relationship. So I think that's another one of the things. So losing relationships, you've got your children, you've got your in-law family, which may or may not be a positive thing, and then you've got your ex themselves. And sometimes when we separate, that can still be a loss, even if it's the correct thing to do. So one of the other concerns, the last one I'm going to talk about today, is what to do with long-term career and finances. And I know we talked about finances at the beginning, but it was more about keeping the house, and this is long-term finances. So a big concern for me was how I was going to financially survive long-term. And it is a genuine thing to worry about, because when the kids turn 18, I'm on my own. It doesn't matter how much support I've given to my husband. It doesn't matter how many years I've dedicated to the children. The law does not support, excuse me, a frog in my throat. I could start again, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to keep going, because you know what? It's all fine. So the law does not support the notion of spousal maintenance anymore after the kids are 18. They do not like it. So this was something that I discovered, and it really means that it doesn't matter how long you have supported everybody, you have to find a career. And that can be very intimidating. For me, it certainly was. I had a corporate career. I'd been out of it for several years. I'd then gone into a job that worked around the children. So I, at that point, needed to find a career, and I thought, well, I don't even know where to start. So life will change whether you like it or not. Whether I want it to change, it's going to change. So I decided that I would make the changes myself and take back control of my financial situation and my financial future. Now, it's a work in progress, and it's still a new business, and starting a business from scratch when you've never run a business before, also, it's hard. Like it is a difficult thing to do, but taking control of that and making the steps forward for the future means it's in my control. And I know that's not always the case. It's sometimes, so I gave up my career for my husband, and I know that that's not always the way it goes. Sometimes it's the woman that has the career and the husband brings up the children, I know. But it is often the woman that ends up giving up chasing their own careers to be around to support everybody. And my husband went to work, and I sorted out all other aspects of our life. So when I got to this career thing, we were starting from ground zero, or I was. It felt very lonely, actually, starting from ground zero. I know what money I have to earn in order to keep the lifestyle that we've got. So that's what I'm focusing on. It gives me something to aim for. One of the things my solicitor said was he's always shocked by how many women particularly sit back and have lots of coffee mornings for years on end and never look at a future career and think that they can be paid for forever. And he said it's not the case. The day will come when they can't do that and they're stuck at home with no income, no pensions, and nothing set up. So starting as early as you can to find out how you can help your financial future is a really important thing to do. So how do you resonate with these worries? Do you read them and think, yes, that's me? Or do you think, no, I'm totally fine, I'm set up for the future, there's no problem? Now, if it's the first one, here are some things that you can work on. So the first thing to work on when you have gone through divorce and separation is building your confidence and self-esteem. Quite often that has taken a real battering in the process, and it's the time when people come to me and say, I don't know who I am, I don't know what I want. Perhaps they have never had confidence and they've never known that, and sometimes they had a very, very set idea of who they were, and that has all been shattered through the process of separation and divorce. So finding out who you are, it's one of the things my clients come to me most often with, and it is the first step in designing the life that you want. So some tools that can help with confidence, some really quick things are give yourself a high five in the mirror. I talk about the Mel Robbins high five frequently, and it's something that I do every morning. I've actually had to put a reminder up because sometimes I forget. So put a reminder somewhere out in your bed that says, high five yourself in the mirror every day. Stand in a power pose. So a couple of minutes in a power pose, feeling strong, shoulders back, arms out, open body posture can set you up for a really much more confident and positive day. Speak to yourself the way you would speak to a good friend, because quite often we speak to ourselves in ways we wouldn't speak to people we didn't like, let alone our friends. So speak to yourself in a way that you would want a friend to speak to you, or you would speak to a friend. The second thing I would say to work on when you're feeling this way is your communication. So within divorce and separation, communication can really collapse. It can be very, very challenging, especially if one is communicating and the other one isn't, or you're hitting brick walls. It's a big thing when it comes to divorce, and sometimes having a mediator can really help with those sorts of things. But what do you do when the communication between you and your partner is really poor or non-existent? When you think that you communicate well, but you can't get through to your ex, and you say they're just thick, they're stubborn, they won't listen, they're unmoving, they just will not hear me. It's time to take a step back and ask yourself, am I being realistic with what I'm expecting or what I'm asking? Have I actually communicated clearly, or am I expecting them to fill in the gaps? Am I using an unhelpful tone of voice when I speak to them? And this can be a really hard one, and it is time to be honest with yourself. Are you using a tone of voice that could be antagonistic? Are you saying things that are an expectation too far? I know there are times when my communication has not been the best, not been as good as it could be, because I've been frightened of the response. I wanted to shy away from what that response might be. So for example, my ex made some very minor changes to the mortgage. It was no big deal, but I got a letter through the post. They weren't financial changes. I got a letter through the post saying that these changes had been made, and I was really annoyed that hadn't been spoken about. And quite a long time later, it turned out that my ex thought that I had made actual changes on the mortgage, which aren't really possible without his signature, but it was the bank that had changed it automatically, not me that had changed it. And I think they had thought I had made changes without their knowledge, which wouldn't have been possible. So as soon as we both kind of seemed to, I could just see light bulbs going on, oh, and the same for me, that actually that was just something we didn't communicate well about. We didn't have the conversation, but I think both of us sort of went, oh, okay, I can see the other person's point of view in that. So if we'd had the communication, I might not have spent months feeling annoyed, going, why did they do that? Because it's just one of those things where sometimes we fill in the gaps for ourselves and we guess what's going on, and we don't ask because we're worried about what the answer might be. And quite often the answer is not what we think it's going to be. So I want you to do a real proper audit on your communication and see whether it is something that you could improve. I love talking about communication now. I help my clients with communicating, with how they can say things in a better way, in a more helpful way. It's probably one of the areas I do more mentoring on than coaching. I use NLP to do some mentoring with my clients on better communication. Sometimes we think we're great communicators, but actually we're just doing a lot of talking. I can be a bit like that sometimes. I hold my hands up, it happens, but I'm much more aware when I'm doing that now. And the final thing to work on is boundaries. One of the things that can really go awry when we divorce and separate are boundaries. It can be very easy to create rigid boundaries, build all those walls and say, no, I'm not doing that and I'm not doing that. I was probably a bit the other way. I was a bit too flexible. I've always been quite flexible. So when we got into some discussions that were really difficult, I would say my door's always open for you. And I did feel that way. And it's been a mantra for years. You know, when we've had difficult times, my door's always open for you. And then it took someone this year to point out that by holding the doors open, I was allowing energy in that no longer belonged to me. It wasn't mine to have. So being unhealthy with my boundaries means that I don't lock the door, I don't put a bolt on it, but equally I don't stand with the door open going, you can come in whenever you like. You know, I have the door shut, there's a little hole in the door I can have a look through to see what they're asking for. I can check it out and then I can make a decision about whether I open the door or not. So being healthy about boundaries, it's good to be aware of where they are, because if they're very, very rigid and you are saying no to everything, then that can create a lot of tension and it's not great for anybody. It's not good for you either. So find the boundaries that help you open the door or choose to shut it when you need to and when you want to. So it's all about our choices. But if you're interested in boundaries, There is a whole thing about boundaries in my worksheet. It's a free guide that you can download. It will be in the comments, so you can download it there too. So finding your new life after divorce, it can be intimidating. There's so many fears to overcome. One thing I have learned is putting your head in the sand does not help. It doesn't change the reality. It doesn't change the law. It doesn't change anything other than when you have the answers, you've got more knowledge to make decisions and know what you're actually facing and put things in place. So the longer you have to create the life that you want, the better. And if you find this all a bit too much to take on board today, it's been a lot of information. As I say, download my free guide. It's a PDF and you can work through it in your own time using some of the tools that are mentioned here, some other things, and you will have a lot more information. It's the tools that I've used to start designing my life after my own divorce and get to where I am now and keep me moving forward to have a future that I really want to have. I hope that's all helpful for you. If any of those issues and fears have resonated with you, look at the attachment in the comments. And also I have a Facebook group, Helping Design Your Life After Divorce and Separation. It's a free group with lots of support, lots of stuff like today that I can help you through. You can ask me questions within the group. It's about having a community to help you design the life that you want. I'll put the link in the comments also. Remember to hit the like, subscribe, all of that kind of stuff, the notification. It really helps me to get the messages out there to help you live the life that you want to live.